What up, world? This is Dominic Syracuse. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I am an actor, stand-up comedian, and cognitive behavioral specialist. And today, I want to break down why the new Superman trailer is blowing up the internet. Now look, unlike some of my other videos, this is not going to be really long-winded where I break it down frame by frame and all of that stuff. Actually, if you want that video, I would recommend New Rockstars. They made an actual breakdown frame by frame of everything you could imagine in this trailer, from what each character means to the music to all sorts of stuff. So if you want that kind of breakdown, I would check this out. What I'm doing is a little different. For those of you who've never seen my channel before and have absolutely no idea who I am, I use acting and improvisation techniques to teach cognitive behavioral therapy and mental health practices in places like maximum security prison. Now start shaking your hands for me. Get that energy going. That's it. That's it. Now like we're in football, give me fast feet. Give me fast. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. All right. And with the United States Air Force. And to really anybody who will listen.
Obstacles
Comes frustration.
comes frustration.
Right?
Right.
Oh, you never do that. And so what fascinates me is why? Why in a time where we hear people complain so often about Hollywood having absolutely no new ideas and how everything is a remake of a remake of a remake of a remake, why would Superman, something they've done so many times over, be such a huge cultural phenomenon only a week after releasing the trailer? So I want to throw my hat in the ring with some ideas that I have. One, regarding the lore of Superman and how he's always sort of interacted with the zeitgeist at really important times. Also, what it might mean for us psychologically and for movies in general, and also address some of the general controversy around it. So, all that said, I want to dive in with the trailer and we'll just kind of go stop and go and see what we can do. You ready? Does it sound good? Let's make it happen. Okay. Now, I know we just started, we're 16 seconds into this trailer, but there's actually a lot of social and psychological implications that you might not have seen. First off, let's start with this desolation, okay? We see here this cold and icy plain, which I don't think the director James Gunn necessarily intended on drawing the parallel that I'm about to talk about, but I think it's still worth noting. Superman has always come to us in desolate times. The original Superman was created in 1938 during the Great Depression and in between two world wars. So we were in a time where we were in desolation, and in comes this superhero. He was originally conceived, believe it or not, by two Jewish dudes who originally modeled his story after Moses, a baby who's found and raised and ends up being really powerful. In fact, it's even believed that they named Superman's father Joel with an E-L because that is a Hebrew rendition of the word God. But later, after World War II, he became a symbol of American values. Truth, justice, and the American way, which is interesting because we currently live in an America that feels like it's run by Lex Luthor. But I digress. It wasn't until the 1970s film that he started to be shown as a metaphor for Jesus, the son of a benevolent being coming down to save the entire earth as this Christ-like figure, which is fitting because Christ also came from two Jews. And now I know all of that seems a lot to draw from a desolate space, but we are in a time of desolation right now. In fact, whenever you turn on the news or social media, it seems like it's just bad news after bad news after bad news. We are extremely divided as a people. There's wars looming all over the place. There's anger and wage gaps. And to be honest, it feels like we could use a superhero right now. And all of a sudden, crashing down out of nowhere is this. And you'll notice right here the suit that he's wearing is very similar to the original throwback to the 1978 film that Christopher Reeves wore with the actual tights and all of that. The next thing you'll notice is we have a Superman that bleeds, which I really like, because my big beef with Superman was that he's just too invincible and he can just do everything. I don't know why he wasn't called Everything Guy. Like, when I was in elementary school, we used to play superheroes at recess and everybody got to pick one superpower. And I feel like Superman was that kid who just picked way too many superpowers and he only did it to like counter whatever superpower you had, you know? He's like, I can fly. And you're like, okay, well, I have super strength. He's like, well, I have super strength too. And you're like, okay, well, I can run fast. He's like, I can actually run fast. And I can blow ice out of my breath. And I can shoot lasers out of my eyes. And bullets bounce off my chest. And there's nothing you can do. Anything you can do, I can do better. Ha, 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 ha. But all of my weirdly specific childhood trauma aside, it's really nice that we immediately have a Superman that can actually be humanized so we can relate to him because he can be hurt himself. Now, the next thing you see is we cut to Clark Kent. Now, I know a lot of people are upset that Mr. Henry Cavill, the Cavalrine, is no longer Superman. In fact, I heard that James Gunn received death threats because he didn't cast Henry Cavill. And like I said towards the beginning of this video, if you're one of the people who freak out over them casting a different Superman and threaten to murder a famous director for supporting another director, y'all need Superman. I'll be honest, I was one of the people who was curious why they didn't keep Henry Cavill around. I thought he's like the brand new Superman. He still seems new to me. And then I realized he did his first Superman movie in like 2013, which was like 12 years ago now. And that made me feel really old. So I applied for my AARP card. But it's to the point where Batman and Superman are kind of like the American equivalents of James Bond, in that everyone's always interested in what new actor is going to play them this time around. And now, this actor that they chose was really great casting, because I never bought into this idea that all Superman had to do was take off his glasses and nobody knew that he was Clark Kent. But this guy, look at him. I mean, this dude with glasses and his hair forward in a suit, I would never imagine is also this guy right here that we just saw. So the casting is super cool, and I'm really interested in what they can do with that. Moving forward, the next thing we see is Clark Kent running into the Daily Planet, which, for anybody that knows, is a newspaper outlet. Now, again, this might be me looking a little too deeply, but there are some interesting coincidences between our world right now and Superman's old world with this trailer. Here's what I mean. It is common knowledge in our current culture that traditional media is dying. They've been saying for years that especially written news and written newspapers have been on their way out. It's been a dying medium that's struggling to survive for the longest time. And with this last year we had, 2024, one of the biggest entities that took a hit was traditional media. With newspapers and news outlets losing credibility with the public, people are saying it is dying. And isn't it interesting that you have a character whose alter ego works at a traditional media outlet, and the next thing it cuts to is him wheezing and bloody and gasping for air? Again, maybe a metaphor that they didn't intend to put in, but something that makes this time around very interesting nonetheless. And then Superman looks directly into the camera before a very epic Now, again, we are drowning in nostalgia here. The font looks so much like the font from the original Superman. The original Superman had a really cool guitar line. We're hearing that. James Gunn is a master of throwing in classic rock, which you can tell by looking around my room. I'm also a huge fan of, whether it was Guardians of the Galaxy or his retake of Suicide Squad. He knows how to put some killer music in some awesome places. But this begs the question, are there new ideas? And what is an older idea really than Superman? I mean, this has been done and done and done and done. However, there is psychological comfort that comes with familiarity. It's the reason that my wife, for instance, will watch Friends every night before she goes to bed. Some people, when they're dealing with anxiety, like to watch something they've seen before because the familiarity brings them comfort. And there is something comfortable in a rapidly changing world to have a story that we already know, that we're already familiar with, and see what new, fresh take this has. This is nothing new. I mean, in the world of theater, Hamlet has been done 1,000 times. Tennessee Williams has been done 1,000 times. There's always a new iteration on Broadway of Phantom of the Opera or Wicked or The Lion King, and we're always interested in seeing what director has a new, fresh take on it. Film is absolutely not different. We are interested in what new take James Gunn has on a familiar classic. And that's why the next sequence is so interesting. Here we have the Daily Planet. There's the new Lois Lane. There's the new Clark Kent. And there's their love connection. We know this story. We've seen it a million times before, but we're interested in seeing a new, fresh take on it. Now, here's the part that makes it extra fun. And we have the reveal of Crypto, aka Superdog. And here's why I love this so much. The question is, how is his Superman going to be different from the Zack Snyder Superman, which was extremely serious? James Gunn reminds us with this adorable freaking puppy right here that it's all make-believe and it's all fun. And even in these harsh times, we're allowed to be a little silly, to be a little flippant. I mean, after all, we're talking about a guy who wears tights on the outside of his pants and does super stuff like fly around and save the day. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to be fun. It's okay to have levity. In fact, whenever you find yourself feeling too serious and like everything is too heavy, I recommend you have a little levity. I recommend you play around and be a little silly. You'll feel better. And if all else fails, find an adorable puppy like this, and I bet you'll feel better immediately. Okay, let's keep going.
Home. Take me home.
Cut to super epic shots. Cut to the new Lex Luthor with Luthor Corp. I like the cut here, very reminiscent of Flags of Our Fathers, another classic World War II reference.
Superman.
I love the shot of them throwing and hitting Superman. You know, Superman is always this beloved figure. He's the hero. He's almost unrelatable because he's so perfect and so good and so likable. I love that we're showing people turning on him, because isn't that what we do? Don't we always find people that society altogether says, hey, we love this guy, he's awesome, only to become so saturated with him that we start turning against him? Again, another metaphor that happened to Jesus, right? And I also wonder if you could tie in a bit of what we were talking about in the media, where we live in such a divided time. We don't know who is the good guy or the bad guy. One side praises this person and says they're the greatest who's ever existed. The other says they're the worst and they're evil and they're the one to blame for everything. We're really living in a time where we don't know who to trust, and we don't know who the good guys are or the bad guys are, and we don't know what to believe or what to believe in. That was always what Superman was about, believing in the American way. But now, I think we're in a time where even we can't agree on what that is. So having somebody throwing trash at Superman is a very interesting way to show that metaphor. Cameos from the Green Lantern, cameos from Aquaman. Again, characters we're really familiar with, but now we get to see them on the big screen, generating some excitement. We got monsters, we got kisses, we got robots, we got ice and cool stuff and places falling and dogs and baseball. and true love. Right after the 4th of July. What could be more American than that? And it ends only in theaters and in IMAX. And this is the last parallel that I'd like to draw. We talked about Superman being this kind of savior from the mental health travesty that has been the last couple years in the United States. He's come in during the Great Depression. He came in after World War II. He came in after the 70s and the steel mills falling down. And we find ourselves in a time of mental health crisis, and we have a new Superman, which brings us a little bit of hope, and that's okay. But it also makes me wonder if it's hope for the film industry itself, because last year was a hard year after the strikes in Hollywood, after the writer's strike, after the actor's strike, after the union workers' strike. Hollywood really has been suffering, so much so that you had people like Jerry Seinfeld saying movies are dead. And Hollywood has been in a scramble saying there's a battle between high-end art and free-form social content like this, which is beating people in the numbers. So I wonder if Superman can not only be a metaphorical savior, but an actual savior of the box office, an actual savior of movies. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to see your comments. Do you think movies are dead or dying? I am thinking about making an entire post about that specifically, but I want to see what your thoughts are. But all in all, my goal for making this video was to really examine from a social psychological perspective, what is it about this new Superman film, which we've seen and heard 1,000 times, that got everybody so excited to where it's on the top trending thing in YouTube and everybody's talking about this new trailer and how they're making a new Superman and how it's so exciting, yeah. And the best I can come up with is that throughout America's history, we have dealt with really hard times. The Great Depression, World War II, the Vietnam War, the recession of 2009, and now reeling off of COVID and wars all over the world and changing of regimes. It always seems like when America is at a low, desolate point, we have a need for a metaphorical superhero to come in and give us hope. And whether we realize it or not, I think this trailer dropped at the exact right time when people are needing that the most. I would love to hear your comments below, so tell me what you think. And also, if you're in need of some hope or a boost in mental health, check out my channel. I post content weekly about entertainment and how it relates to mental health, and also little practices to help you, especially as we go into this winter season where people deal with a lot of seasonal depression and things like that. I'm going to be posting a lot more about mental health. I also have a channel for my business, Cogby Theater. You can check that out, where we have actual classes and videos all related to mental health. So if that's something that you find yourself struggling with or curious about, pop over there, check out those videos. It's just a bunch of free techniques that I show people all over the world to help take control of their emotions so their emotions don't have control over them. All that said, like and subscribe. And if there's anything you'd like me to make a video about, comment below. I'm happy to help, and I'm here for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, again, like and subscribe. And until I see you again, remember, this machine kills fascists.